Professor Chen's voice became shrill and piercing. The already narrow tomb made the sound even more mournful and terrifying. All three of us secretly felt doubtful, confused. If Professor Chen had gone mad, then so be it, but why did his voice suddenly change like that? I shook the professor's shoulder, trying to help him regain some consciousness. Unexpectedly, he shouted louder and louder, waving his hands. "Don't leave here. Don't leave here." While shouting, he desperately tried to push my arm away. I worried that Professor Chen, acting this crazily, would do things that could threaten the safety of all of us. So I called Tuan Bio to help, and together we pressed him to the ground. Shirley Yang was afraid that Tuan Bio and I would injure the professor, and hurried to stop us. But when the professor saw her approach, he suddenly stretched out his arm, snatched the goatskin book from Shirley Yang's hand, tore off the last page and stuffed it into his mouth, chewing noisily. The goatskin, having endured thousands of years, was both hard and tough. It was naturally impossible to chew. Professor Chen ignored everything, stubbornly stuffing the goatskin into his mouth and chewing madly. After a severe shock, the professor became dazed and foolish. But why did he suddenly act up and switch to this state? Someone with a mental breakdown could not be affected by a fragrant corpse. Could he have been possessed by a ghost? Did he not want us to survive and leave this place? Tuan Bio pulled the goatskin out of the professor's mouth. The goatskin was unharmed, but his mouth was full of fresh blood. To prevent any unforeseen circumstances, we had to temporarily tie him up. What concerned me was whether the last page of that goatskin book was damaged. If there was a way to escape this place, it would surely be on the last page. If Professor Chen had chewed and swallowed it, then we would truly be in trouble. The last page had a lot of Professor Chen's saliva on it, and also blood stains from his gums, but there were no drawings or symbols, just a blank page. I said to Shirley Yang, "It's ruined, the prophet's prophecy has been licked away by the old man." Shirley Yang replied, "Don't worry, this last page originally had no content at all." I felt a little regretful for my clumsiness just now. Today, for some reason, everything went wrong, making me irritable and impulsive. I couldn't calm down, no matter what I said or did. I always felt something wasn't quite right in this tomb. However, the prophet's prophecy was incredibly accurate. He naturally could predict what crazy Professor Chen would do, so the last goatskin page was left blank. It seems that our every move in this stone chamber had long been predetermined. Thinking more would be useless. It's better to relax and let nature take its course. Tuan Bio and I held Professor Chen down, letting Shirley Yang continue reading the previous content. Professor Chen was held between us, unable to move, only struggling constantly, but no longer screaming. Shirley Yang continued to explain the prophecy in the goatskin book. The prophet foretold that 800 years after his death, his tribe had long since left for the distant east to seek refuge. Mount Zaklamo welcomed a new tribe. This tribe came from the western desert, and they also discovered the ghost cave in the mountain. The shaman of the tribe declared this to be where gods and demons resided. This tribe was the predecessor of the Jingzhou kingdom. The queen of Jingzhou had a pair of demon eyes that could see through the underworld. She mastered a ritual using jade eyes as sacrifices to summon the spirits of venomous snakes, and relied on this to conquer more than 10 neighboring countries. Their tyrannical acts angered God. He handed over this place along with all the nearby cities to evil spirits. The desert swallowed all their cities, all the people, livestock of this country, even the evil spirits of the black snakes in the ghost cave were buried deep underground. Tuan Bio began to get impatient, no longer able to wait. He urged Shirley Yang to quickly tell the rest of the content, to leave this stifling tomb as soon as possible. Shirley Yang said, "Finally, it's a message for the four of us. The prophecy indicates that 4 lucky survivors, due to a crack in the mountain's heart, will enter this tomb. One of them is a descendant of the ancient holy tribe." I asked in surprise, "Descendant? Does that mean having the bloodline of that ancient tribe?" Although it doesn't specify who, I think there's a very high chance you are their descendant. Otherwise, why didn't Tuan Bio and I dream of the ghost cave? Perhaps you inherited the tribe's precognition ability, and thus saw in advance the place you would have to go. Tuan Bio also agreed. That's right, it's definitely our Miss Yang. First, we didn't notice it before, but Miss Yang's nose is somewhat like a hawk's nose, and her eyes are slightly blue. We just thought it was because she lived in America for a long time. Now that I look again, it's clear she inherited her ancestors' bloodline. From the roots, she's not entirely Chinese. Shirley Yang seemed unable to accept this, shaking her head and saying, I don't know, my family has been Chinese for generations. Perhaps it's from my mother's side. My maternal grandfather's nose was also a hawk's nose. Regardless of who the descendant mentioned in the prophecy is, it's no longer important. The urgent matter at hand is to quickly leave this place. The prophecy also says that the ancient Holy One will show their tribal descendant a way to survive, but the goatskin book must never fall to the ground. When the goatskin book falls to the ground, a sandstorm will immediately rise, and the yellow sand will once again swallow the ancient city of Jingzhou and the sacred Mount Zalkama. And this time, the sea of sand will devour this place until time reaches its extreme. I quickly reminded Shirley Yang, then don't let the book fall to the ground, otherwise a sandstorm will immediately rise. Before we can escape, we'll be buried along with this tomb. Is there anything else written after that? Shirley Yang replied, this is the end, there's nothing more after this. The ancient Holy One will show us a way out. Check if there are any clues on the prophet's remains. Saying that, she opened the bag she carried to safely put the goatskin book inside. Just then, Professor Chen, who was held between us, suddenly generated a strange strength, broke free from us, and shouted strange noises as he lunged towards Shirley Yang. We only heard him shriek, never hoped to escape this place. All three of us were stunned by Professor Chen's scream. It wasn't entirely because his scream was piercing. By now, we could clearly hear that the professor's mournful and terrifying cry was very similar to Yikin's voice, who had just died here. Taking advantage of the 1 or 2 seconds before we could react, Professor Chen knocked the goatskin book out of Shirley Yang's hand. The incident happened too suddenly. We could only react with a special improvisation. Life or death is always decided in an instant. I lifted my leg and kicked the goatskin book, which was falling straight to the ground, deflecting it like a football. The direction I kicked the book was perfectly towards where Tuan Bio was standing. Tuan Bio didn't dare to be careless, but the book's trajectory was too low, and he couldn't bend down in time. So he had to kick it again, not daring to let it touch the ground. The tomb was already narrow and low. These 2 kicks were like a circus act, almost choking everyone. Perhaps because of the hydrocortisone secreted by the adrenal glands, time seemed to stand still for a few seconds. Tuan Bio's kick sent the book diagonally upwards, flying straight towards Shirley Yang's face. Just as Shirley Yang was about to raise her hand to catch it, Professor Chen suddenly lunged again, blocking her path. He stretched out his hand, caught the book, and following the momentum, threw it to the ground once more. Just then a large figure lunged forward, bumping Professor Chen, who fell sprawling. It turned out Tuan Bio saw the situation worsening, and immediately used his using flesh to crush people technique, which he had always considered a forbidden secret art, knocking Professor Chen to the ground with one shove. I also hurried over, snatching the time bomb from the professor's hand. The goatskin book, which decided everyone's fate, finally did not fall to the ground. Shirley Yang pushed Tuan Bio away. Professor is already this old. Are you trying to crush him to death? If anything happens to him, I'll make you pay with your life. While speaking, she massaged Professor Chen, whose mouth and nose were askew from being crushed by Tuan Bio. That fatty mass, Tuan Bio, luckily didn't take the old man's life. I carefully tucked the goatskin book into the book pouch tied around my waist, then said to Shirley Yang and Tuan Bio, "Did you two notice anything? The old man is very strange. When I heard his voice, why did it sound like Yi Yikin?" Tuan Bio said, "That's right, could it be that the girl's soul has possessed him? She died unjustly, and is afraid that if we leave, she'll have no one to accompany her. She wants to keep us here. It actually sounds quite pitiable." I cursed, "Damn you. The living and the dead don't share the same path. When she was alive, she was our companion. Now that she's dead, she wants to drag us down to keep her company?" That's the selfish thought of a narrow-minded woman. Shirley Yang said, "You two stop talking nonsense. There's no such thing as ghosts in this world." Professor must be confused in his mind, which led to such behavior. Even if there were ghosts, why wouldn't they possess our 3 bodies and only target Professor Chen? I replied, "Then you don't know. The situation is urgent right now, and I can't explain it in detail. I have black donkey hooves, Tuan Bio also has them, and you have a Mojin amulet around your neck. Professor Chen has nothing, and his mind is muddled, his inner 3 flames are weak, so he's easily susceptible to harm. If you don't believe me, put this donkey hoof into the professor's mouth. You'll know right away if he's possessed." Shirley Yang refused. "Is this something a human can eat? If you want to eat donkey hooves, you go eat them." I thought to myself, anyway, there was no hope of getting anything else. Now, the important thing was to survive and escape this place. Any carelessness would lead to disaster. It was absolutely necessary to use the black donkey hoof to see if Professor Chen was truly possessed. His earlier behavior was definitely not as simple as ordinary symptoms of madness. I ignored Shirley Yang's protests and resolutely shoved the black donkey hoof into Professor Chen's mouth. By then, his expression was no longer ferocious as before, but had returned to his initial dazed state. Seeing the black donkey hoof near his mouth, he opened his mouth and bit it, chewing and smiling foolishly. Shirley Yang angrily said, "Are you going to torment the professor to death? Quickly take out the donkey hoof." I quickly pulled out the black donkey hoof. It seemed I was a bit too suspicious. The 4 of us finally managed to calm down with difficulty. Thinking back to the prophet's prophecy that would show us a way to survive, everyone sat around the prophet's remains, observing meticulously, afraid of missing any tiny clue.